Okay, everyone, we are here with Mark and Serge for a talk all things Star Wars CCG graded. What is hot, what is not. And generally, it's been way too long since we have talked about this, Mark, and I'm excited to have Serge here for his perspective since he has been active in the community with BGS sales and grading. And I don't know where you get your stockpile of amazing cards, but I want to hear all about it. So welcome both of you. Um,
Thanks.
let's get right into it. I want to start with you, Sergey, because I haven't really spoken with you. I've done some of these Star Wars collector things, and I know we've been meaning to do that. But let me get your background here. Where did you start with collecting Star Wars CCG? How did this all begin for you?
Yeah, sure. Started back when I was in elementary school, so around 10 years old I was at that point. So I didn't even speak English whatsoever. I just loved Star Wars. And we were into Magic the Gathering at that time. Me, a group of friends, because they had older brothers giving us cards and whatnot. And
So what was that? 93, 94, 95, like the first sets?
94, 95, yeah, that's
Yeah.
where.
Okay.
And yeah, we didn't know what we were doing because nobody spoke English because we're in Quebec here in French. So we just like the pictures and we see numbers and we like come up with our own rules and stuff. And
Oh wow.
eventually, some of the older brothers showed us the new Star Wars card. Like, look, guys, there's a new Star Wars card game, and I really like Star Wars because of the movies and stuff. So I immediately liked it, and it was so nice because you could see like all kinds of weird information about the characters and locations, and you had like the power ability, so you could like gauge the strength, power, whatever of the character. So yeah, just a bunch of information that really got me into collecting because we had no idea how to play. Of course, it was pretty complicated, even for the few who could play. So for me, it was just a collecting thing. So we
Yeah,
started with
I
Premiere.
totally feel you with the like just the information about the characters. It felt like we were getting that Star Wars where there really wasn't anything coming out. It wasn't until they dropped the special editions like later in the 90s and then episode 1 that was like what 99, right? So there was like a lull period where this was like, oh, new Star Wars information, right? Like
Yeah, these
new
aliens have
galaxy
names.
expanding, right?
These ships have names and numbers, and that's so cool. I want to learn more. And
Yeah.
yeah. So that's what got me into collecting, and I didn't get that far into the Star Wars CCG, as a whole, because it was pretty hard to get cards back then. Like the local stores only held a few booster boxes, and it wasn't that popular. So I think after the Dagobah, they stopped selling completely. So I couldn't really continue my sets. So
Oh, really?
Premiere, A New Hope, Hot, then a little bit of Dagobah, and then it kind of vanished.
Wow.
And it's when the pandemic started that everybody got stuck in their house. I think that's the case for many people who dug at their old cards and found, oh yeah, I was collecting that like 20 years ago. It was so cool. And so
So you were cold turkey by the time Dagobah, what was that? 97, 98, right? So after that, nothing
yeah,
until 2019, like 20 years?
I never could buy cards even from Dagobah. I mean, at that time I didn't have money anyway,
Hmm.
so uh, I really like though the following the Decipher website at that time. So they would post all the new card list, and I
Mm.
would scroll through all the characters and learn about the ships, locations, and whatnot. But I could never get my hands on any of those sets. So
That's crazy. So you came back with the pandemic and then you were just what? hooked right then and there? You were just like, oh
Well,
wow, like
I went through my binders of my old sets, and I was like, yeah, that's something I would like to complete today. And now that I have good income compared to as a kid, it took a
right,
month or so to complete my sets, and I was not exactly hooked, but I wanted more. Like, yeah, okay, that was fun. I want to do maybe booster boxes. I bought a few boxes at that time, but that didn't do it for me. So
so you go to Japan, you buy 20 boxes of Hoth Japanese and Japanese Premiere. You say, I'm going to grade this in five, six,
yeah,
seven.
that's not exactly how it went, but uh,
It
yeah,
feels that way.
I was a little bored with the English sets, and like I needed a challenging goal basically.
Hmm.
And at some point, I don't remember who, when, but someone made a post on the Star Wars main group. Like, these are the most rare or most sought after expensive cards. So there was like Darth Maul, Young Apprentice, and I don't know if the Japanese Vader was above or below, but it's like, oh wow, this card is actually hard to find. So maybe I do have a challenge, like with Premier Japanese, because
Mm-hmm.
the English one just felt so common, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to grade like any of those. I wanted like something rare, something difficult to obtain. So when that guy mentioned that the Japanese cards existed and they were hard to find, I didn't even know they existed. But I go, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm gonna do. Like, they look tough to find, and they also match my nostalgia from the early sets.
Hmm.
So that's what I started getting some boxes. And I have to mention to my wife and my daughters are both Japanese. Well, my daughters are half Japanese, half Canadian. So I thought, yeah, that's something I'll be able to share with them, with the family, and well, let's do it. Let's buy a bunch of Japanese cards, and then
That's
I
cool.
I
Mm.
found the website, like the auction, the Japanese auction websites in the pandemic, and some seller over there was just dumping boxes after boxes every week or every 3 days or something. There was a boxes on auction, and I was just grabbing them and had a big pile at some point. And I said, yeah, okay, let's grade them. It's gonna be fun.
Right place at the right time.
Yeah,
Gotta love
I
those.
guess so. Yeah. So I was trying to scoop as many sealed premiere and A New Hope and whatever hot I could find on the Japanese markets, and even on the Star Wars groups too. Some people were selling and trading them. Yeah, so built a big pile of them, and don't want to sell. So grading is the way to go.
Well, yeah, and if you're able to navigate the international buying markets, then you can capture stuff that a lot of people here in the States like just don't see or won't find or won't go out of their way to get it because they don't trust it.
Right.
So
Because at first I was pretty lost on the Japanese website, so I had to ask my girlfriend to translate stuff and like do the payments and whatnot with her cards from Japan, because
yeah,
I couldn't do anything. And so yeah, I had some help that way.
yeah, no, that's cool. I can appreciate the wanting to go after a challenge for sure because sometimes you're like, well, you don't want to go after it if you think it's just not possible, but if you're like, it's possible, but it's going to be hard, it might take time. There could be some real chase cards in there. Like that's kind of fun.
Yeah, the English
I can appreciate.
premiere was all the nostalgia for me, but it's I felt it too easy to get. Like I already had a bunch of them, and they were not in so much good condition at all. But like the print run is massive, right? For the English Premier. So
It is, but certain cards in there are still holding their value
oh
to
yeah, I was wrong actually at that time. Like I should have went more for English. I thought it was too easy, print runs too big, but yeah, I was wrong. It's actually there's
well,
a
I
lot
don't
of
know if you're
demand for
wrong.
it.
I mean,
Japanese is very niche.
it's fair to say that there's product out there, right? But there's like product for the sake of like either playing with it or it's good for a traditional binder as a set. But if it's something that it's like a individual card of high quality, now that's much harder. So this whole grading game goes back to the chase, right? The like this is really hard. It's possible, but it's very hard. So now even the
Right.
cards that are even if they're rare but very abundant, they're extremely rare when you're talking about the top tier quality of those cards, right? So it's kind of like this renewed sense of the chase that everyone's got. Like we could still enjoy the same thing, but now there's like the new chase, right? Yeah, I don't know about you, Mara. I've been kind of just blown away with some of the prices I've seen with some of the English Premier stuff, especially with this Darth Vader.
Cal turning into a
Yeah,
robot.
Kyle, you're turning a
Oh.
robot. We lost
I'm
you.
turning into a robot.
Oh, you're back now. You're back.
Oh, what I was saying was I am blown away with just the sheer interest with regular English Premier, and it's grading. You know, these values are crazy. Like, there's just still so much interest in it, despite saying that there's so many printed.
Yeah, the value is great if you have tens, but if you have nines, I look at the chart we have, like the tracker. Most characters in 9 will sell below 100, which is not that great in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Compared
some
to the
older
tens
stamps
that
here.
will fetch like multiple hundreds, sometimes in the thousands, like there's such a huge gap.
Yeah, I mean, the most recent here looks like I guess January 23rd, $333 for a PSA 9. There's an auto here. But yeah, some of those are auto. This PSA 9 to 316. I mean, that's still pretty strong though.
Vader's definitely a front runner there, and I think anything like I forget what's the year that Serge the tens, any tens will do well, but nines Premier's just hard to grade. Like a limited black border Premier, anyways.
There's a few that ended like this week or last week, like
Yeah.
PSA 9 Leia and maybe some others that I'm forgetting, but Leia was like $70 or something.
Yeah.
So it's pretty weak. I mean, compared to the 10 or the BGF 9.5 that sold recently, which is like, I don't know.
I feel like part of the
20,
issue right now is a little bit of fatigue. Like almost, I think people are too used to seeing some of the main characters. So for that reason, you get those meme auctions like the Probe Droid or whatever that went for like $300 for the PSA 10 Probe Droid. I mean, I'm sort of joking, but I think people like seeing those really like odd cards that are graded and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a timer mine or something, and someone will bid it to, 20, 30, $40 just because it hasn't been seen before.
Why waste time trying to find the mains when we could grade these huge pile of comments that we have that could probably get many tens?
Yeah, I mean, I graded like some of the Japanese ones, like the commons and stuff, and I have a whole stack of tens, but I just don't really have any interest in selling them. I don't know what the market would be for them. If I put them on auction, they would definitely sell, and probably over $100, like all of them, right? I think it's basically at this point people are so thirsty for that top tier. Even some of the BGS like 9.5s. And with the subgrades, if they include tens and stuff, for sure, like people
like
are
there's definitely latent interest there, but right now the size, in my opinion, the size of the buyer pool is small enough that it's very random from week to week. Like sometimes you'll just get the right mix of buyers and then it'll shoot up to, I don't know, like a higher price, or sometimes they're just busy. I don't know, it's like a holiday or they're just not there and you get a low price. And that's kind of where it's at, which is nice, I guess, compared to a lot of other markets. You know, you have the big ones like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and Magic, and then probably Star Wars CCGs in the next tier below. And then there's probably a bunch of card games that like no one cares about. So,
Yeah,
it is
that's
what it is.
definitely true. I mean, I do have Star Wars CCG graded like saved search in eBay, right? But and I'll just look at like whatever's ending soonest, because I think it's pretty common that now everybody has it ending on Sunday, right? Like
Yeah.
I only have to check it like Friday, Saturday to see like, oh, what's this week's like round of cards, you know, and see if there's anything either I don't have or something that might help me in the registry. So there's like a few there, but then everything else is posted as a buy it now price. But a lot of that stuff sits week over week, month over month.
Oh
We
yeah,
see cards over and over. But if you put it at an auction for 99 cents, like it'll definitely sell. And for more than 99 cents usually. I mean, but a lot of people don't want to run that risk because they don't know who's actually paying attention this week, right? Like what you were saying.
The amount of graded cards on eBay is really big right now, and the market cannot absorb all that. So you have like hundreds and hundreds of graded cards sitting on eBay, but we don't even have that many collectors to begin with. I feel like active collectors.
Yeah, I think I was surprised just by the sheer number of people that decided to grade a lot and then immediately like sell, large lots. I mean, there are people that are keeping some, right? But there were a lot that were like just grading them and then just selling whatever. But clearly they didn't do their homework on like some of the cards they sent in. So there's like 6s and 7s in there. It's like, did you really look at that with a magnifying glass? Like, did you really take utmost care with that, or did you just find a stack of cards you're like, these are good, and just throw them in a bulk order? Like I kind of asked that question because it's like you're spending a lot of money to grade all this stuff up front, and then if it comes back a 7 or below, you're getting less than raw value for that card. Like
Yeah, and you're down the grading cost as well.
You're better off just cracking it out of the slab and then just selling it raw. Like, and maybe somebody will be interested in it for a set or something. But I don't really see the appeal of when you come back with 7s, even some 8s. I mean, it depends on the card, maybe. But
yeah, it's not rare enough that 7 and 8s are gonna come at a premium. Like there's just so many of these well, it depends which single, of course, but at least from the early sets, there's just it feels like an infinite supply of 7, 8s, and maybe even 9s for some of them. So they just don't come at any premium.
Yeah, probably like a New Hope. I mean, there's a pretty small set, and the mains are like R2s. So there's there's probably a lot of certain rares that could be popped.
Yeah, there's too many opportunities to be able to rip open fresh product and potentially submit something fresh. So for those, I'm like, why would I buy a slab when like I literally have like piles and piles of boosters I could probably start ripping and maybe get one myself. Maybe not. I mean, it might not grade well, but I would like the opportunity to try. If I can't do it, then like I'll buy it. But
right, at least like back fresh, you're almost guaranteed to have some good quality. Like you're rarely gonna open back fresh cards that are gonna come back 7 and 8s. Well, maybe 8s, but
if they're foils, you might get 8s for sure.
Right, foils, yeah.
And the first set. But
I bought many sets of Japanese cards at the beginning, and most of these sets that I bought came with a lot of scratches on them. Like people were storing them in boxes and binders and stuff, and I graded all of them. And I think of like 50 cards that I graded at BGS, I had only 2 gem mints, 9.5. Everything else was 9. Always had scratches everywhere. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm done buying collections. I'm just gonna buy sealed and open them myself. At least I know there's there's gonna be a good stuff in the packs, and I'll take good care of them compared to like a shoe boxes cards.
So tell me about. I want to unpack too. You're a big advocate of using BGS, and I know there's like a core group of, collectors that are using BGS. I happen to have BGS, PSA, HGA, SGC. I have a bunch of different stuff. But what draws you most to them, and why do you continue to use them? Is that something you decided early on, or what are your thoughts on that?
Definitely came from Magic again. Magic the Gathering, because I was I'm still collecting the old sets of Magic, and in Magic it's like the opposite of Star Wars. It's 90% is BGS, about 10% PSA. Now CGC is rising too, so there's that. But when I started in like 2015, 2016 to collect graded Magic, it was almost all BGS, and like I like the slabs, the labels. I like the subgrades, of course. Like I was a big fan of the subgrades, like to know why my card get the grade it gets, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started Star Wars, I just went with what I knew already. I didn't really care about the community going hard on PSA, because for me PSA didn't do it with Magic, so I had no reason to go with it with Star Wars.
Yeah, I forget who I was talking with before, but maybe it was with Mark. But like some communities are stronger in with BGS, and PSA is like whatever. Like the One Piece community is all about BGS because the quality of these cards is so high that they want to distinguish between the 9.5s and the 10s. Like it's actually a big price difference, and they want that like clarity of like perfection.
Absolutely,
cards are gorgeous and
PSA 10 is anywhere between BGS 8.5 and BGS 10, so it's very vague. You know you have a gem mint, but how gem mint is it? Like I can put two PSA 10 next to each other, and one of the two is clearly better than the other. So I think it deserves like a something to distinguish the really pristine ones, which I can't get any. BGS won't give 10s anymore. It's super hard. Like I graded hundreds and hundreds now of Star Wars, and not a single 10.
So you're a fan of the 9.5 existing. Is that what I'm gathering? You like that 9.5 exists?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How do you feel about it, Mark?
How do I feel about the BGS 9.5 existing?
I think 9.5s in general. I think I want to go beyond just BGS, because SGC uses 9.5s, and I mean HGA did, but not anymore. But you know,
we were briefly discussing before this call. I believe one of the companies was SGC. I think it might have been SGC has the 9.5 as like a mint plus between the 9 and the 10, and I kind of like that more than either the PSA model of having this giant gap between a 9 and a 10, or the BGS model of having like where a 10 is pretty much impossible and 9.5 is pretty much just the top you're going to get within reason. And then when something does get a 10, it's like, well, is this really any better than the 9.5s? And people are like, is this, Black Label actually better? And there's all that debate. I like that little nuance. Subgrades, I like them in theory, but sometimes I find that they don't, especially like the centering ones. Sometimes I don't necessarily agree, but even then it's like, is it actually better? But I understand the appeal of it. It's just for me, I don't know. I would like having a little bit more of like nuance with the 9.95 and the 10 than what there's currently. But yeah, there's just a lot of opinions.
Have consistency with the subgrades. Like when you get used to them, you kind of start expecting some subgrades on your card because you can compare with whatever you already have, and okay, this card should really get a 9.5 centering or whatever, and then it comes back a 9 and it doesn't make sense. You compare it with other 9s and other 9.5, like there's no consistency sometimes. Like most of the time it's pretty accurate, but it's not perfect for sure.
I do find that the slabs I have with subgrades, I tend to agree with the way it came out more. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense when I don't see them. You know, I'm like, how the heck did I get that? But you know, if I'm looking at like, oh, surface is great, you know, corners, but the edges are not quite there, I'm like, okay, well, that's fair, right? I think it to some degree it does hold the grading company itself a little bit accountable, right? Because they're showing what they gave it, you know, and then they kind of have to stand behind that, right?
It is nice too for some of the cards that are kind of, I don't want to call them outliers, but for example, in particular, PSA 9 seem to have a ton of variants. So you'll get ones where like the centering's all jacked up, but the card itself is in very good condition. Or you'll get ones where it's like it's got a couple nicks on the edges, but maybe the centering's spot on. So it's like they're two very different cards if you look at them in person, but they're both PSA 9s by the label. So yeah, the subgrades are really nice in cases like that.
They go by their grading scale. So every company has a different grading scale, and for the most part, they stick to it. Like they respect their criterias, but from a company to the other, it can vary a lot. And like BGS is good. From my experience, BGS is really harsh on centering and surface compared to PSA. PSA, you can get tens with cards that are visibly off center. That BGS would punish you immediately, and you can't get 9.5.
Yeah, I mean the front or the back, and also I've had tens where there's like actual like nicks on the side. I'm like, how in the heck did that get a 10?
It's pretty funny. You guys know Manu PL. He's buying a lot of my BGS 9s whenever I have like extras, and then I don't know how many converted to PSA 10s, but that just shows like
a bunch.
There's definitely a gap between like PSA and BGS.
And when you do that, you want to crack it, right? You don't want to submit it in the BGS so they know it got a 9. You want to like crack it out and resub it, right?
Yeah.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
I rarely resubmit a card for review. Like sometimes it works and you don't want to risk getting a lower grade, but yeah, for the most part, like 90% of the time I just crack it.
So thinking in line with just the grading industry, because I feel like all these things get bulked together. If you were to look at all the companies at once, would you rather have them all have their own like names or styles or slab looks, but all follow the same collective, you know, model, whether that was subgrades or no subgrades, 9.5s, no 9.5s, and just allow them to do it in their own space and by their own judgment, but be the same? Or is it healthier, better to have some companies that do subs, some that don't, some that have 9.5s, some that don't? Or is it possible that, you know, some companies would leave it optional whether you wanted to have a subgrade in there or not? You know, is that good or not? Like, where do you stand on like from a preference standpoint if you were looking at it from a whole?
I would say personally, I would prefer if all companies had the same standards of grading, but then just had a different like service slabs and subgrades, no subgrades, whatever, but they all respected the same standards and criterias. I think that would be ideal, but of course it's not how it works. Every company has its own grading scale, and sometimes you get a BGS 9 that turns into a PSA 10, and then you send it to CGC and it's a 9.5, and then there's a price difference between all those three. So I think that kind of creates a little bit of a mess in the pricing of the cards. So yeah, for me, I would prefer if they all had the same standards, but just different slabs and services and stuff. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice if they standardized, but in some ways, I think they're all almost pseudo doing that anyways because they see that PSA is kind of ringleader, and it's almost like they look at what PSA is doing to capture the market share, and they're trying to emulate some of those. And BGS is kind of the last one standing on their old kind of way of doing things, and unfortunately, I think it's hurting them in a from a market share perspective. And I appreciate, that maybe they are out of them and PSA, maybe the more I wouldn't say rigorous, maybe, but it's not wrong necessarily. But maybe they do have some more rigor in some ways. But unfortunately, people like being able to sell things as 10s because that's what people see. Like, oh, a 10, that's like better than a 9.5, even though they're different companies, and that's what gets sales. So that's just what the companies are going to.
Yeah, at some point you gotta wonder, like, are people after the cards or are they after the labels? They're gonna pay $100 for the BGS 9 and 1,000 for the PSA 10 of the very same card that just got cracked and converted. So yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it creates some mess in the pricing.
Yeah, PSA can kind of drive me nuts in the fact that if they decided that your card's worth more, they'll just jack up the price. And they charge a ton for shipping, unlike some of the other companies, which charge a normal amount for shipping, which also kind of is annoying. It's a money grab, but at the same time, they're the bully in the market. So if they're doing 80% of the grades, give or take, like they can kind of do whatever the hell they want. I think there's subsects and different collections or types, like we were saying with One Piece or Magic, where people are like, we've used this, grading label, and this is the standard accepted because that's what we've been using and going forward. But it's no secret that BGS, CGC, HGA, I mean, and probably some others have changed their standards of grading over the last few years, some to negative publicity, big time, flipping back and forth between it. PSA has kind of stayed the same and just chilled and done their own thing because they can. I don't think it's healthy for any business to just try and emulate the leader and just become like the second fiddle. I think if you want to make a splash in an industry, you kind of have to charge your own path forward and innovate in the space. Otherwise, your business is going to fail, right? So we have to look at this from the standpoint of like, these are operating companies, they're businesses trying to make money, trying to make it work, and they have to come up with different things and do things a little bit differently to try and chart a path forward. And they can't keep doing the same old thing. That's not going to keep them moving forward. Like you were saying, if BGS doesn't change, like, are they going to be able to keep up, or are they going to get run over by newer players or newer innovations, right? There's something to be said with that. It's not just about the collector. I mean, we think about ourselves because we're selfish and we want it our way, right? But
I mean, I've personally been I haven't gotten the modern ones. I got kind of the older style of CGC slabs before they were doing Star Wars. I actually submitted to them originally in 2020, I believe it was, when there was the big backlog at PSA and Beckett. And I think they actually have really nice like case quality in that sense. And since they have the whole like comics thing going for them, they have a fairly big following in a tangential sense, and that they have a reputable history as a comic grading company. I think they've gotten quite a bit of market share, actually. I don't know if they're ahead of BGS or close to it now. But yeah, like you said, like other newer companies are kind of innovating. And I think they did redo their grading scale, because I think it used to be closer to BGS's, and then they made it kind of closer to PSA's now, if I recall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did change that.
Yeah, they got rid of subgrades, and they made it so there's two 10s, two possible 10, like the pristine black label, which is the top, and then you have the gem mint 10 with the white label, and then 9.5, 9. I don't know how low it can get, but just having two possible 10s is, I think it was a great move on their part.
I agree. I think I like the fact that, because BGS has that, they have the 10, but then there's like the black label, right? So they're giving you that, like, this is an exceptional card, right? HGA, I don't know if we'll ever see a pristine card of Star Wars CCG, but like in theory it exists, right? I do like that they call that out, as opposed to something that just barely averaged out enough to get to 10 versus like a truly standout gem card. But
people like them. They like to have the highest possible number. They don't like 9 and 9.5, right? Well,
Yeah, and I just
it
like was
depends for
saying,
which game, but at least for the majority, I think people like to have 10 because it's the 10. It's the biggest number.
Yeah, it's got to be better than a 9.5.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, like you were saying before, Serge, like what is your plan? Like, what's your goal? Like, what are you trying to do with this? Like, if you're just grading them and then your plan is to sell them, then you probably want to do whatever the market is demanding the most from for whatever grading company that is. You know, some it might not matter, but some it does matter. Versus if you want it graded for your own collection, you know, then do whatever the hell you want. Like, who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah, just like you do, Kyle. You do like a HGC, is it?
There's HGA I use for my personal
HGA.
collection cards. The ones, for the most part, I just like displaying or having to
Same.
look at. But then I have the PSA ones for either I'm submitting for a registry set, or it might be something I might trade or sell down the line.
Like if you wanted to sell your cards for profit, we wouldn't say, "Oh, HGA is the way to go." Like clearly, you do it because it's your thing. Your custom labels. You like it for your own collection. Same for me. I do BGS not because it's the most popular and easy to sell, but because it's what I like. And then my extra stuff, I convert them to PSA because that's easier to get sold on. My for the community, they appreciate more. 90% of Star Wars is PSA, so
Yeah.
that's it's hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, well, from the words of the vice president of like TCG collectibles at HGA, he's like, we really don't expect our custom slabs to be on the market. You know, if they are, maybe once, because we really want them in the hands of the true collector. Like, they're designed to be the people who want to keep them and look at them. So I don't expect it to become like a new stock market of up and down sales coming through those cards. So I'm not surprised at all. Like, they're not really there. Now, that's not to say people don't buy and sell and trade them. There is an active community of HGA graded people. It's primarily sports cards, though. And sports cards is so dense already. Like, there's so many people in that space already that it's kind of different, you know? Like, Star Wars CCG, I mean, we're kind of a pretty intimate group. We're still pretty small. I don't know if we're really, like you said, if the market's even large enough now, or if it will be. I don't know, for anybody to care enough about that. But when it comes to separating like the 9s and 10s, I think that's why you were seeing so many cards that would normally be like in a sports world or a larger, like a Pokemon or something, like 8s and 9s would still easily sell, whereas maybe they'll sit more here because it's just not large enough community. So,
Well, that was actually a big part of why. I mean, part of it was because I was submitting a bunch of Pokemon, but that's part of why, for example, when I was submitting, hundreds of cards of Star Wars, I submitted to PSA, is because I figured you have both the other very large TCGs. Well, I guess Magic is a lot of that is BGS, but Pokemon's primarily PSA. Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm not sure. I don't really know which one Yu-Gi-Oh players or collectors prefer. Like sports cards, I mean, they do some Evolve, but it's so huge, and they do PSA. And then they're getting into Topps cards. I don't know what they do there, what their grading card of choice grading company of choice is. But if you do PSA, you can kind of bring in the most people. I mean, I still get people on my eBay auctions, just for reference, and for any of the viewers, I have a eBay store and I sell cards pretty much every week or every other week, and you'd be surprised at like the number of people who are just like fresh faces every week, and lots of them are like sports card collectors. So I think that maybe that's the way to make it more
Do you still
appealing.
sell a lot of Star Wars?
Me? Do I still sell?
Yeah, on your Dart Grader.
Yeah, I tried. I've been taking a little bit more breaks recently, but I'll probably have them up usually every week from like a Thursday 10-day auction. Been kind of boring recently with a lot of like 8s of like mains, although I'll try to put at least like 1 9 or 10 up every week. But I got some more. I've got some requests for some more new blood stuff. So I tried to submit a lot of really like odds and ends. So I'm actually grading. I'm hand grading a bunch of cards right now. So here I've got a bunch of like Endor foils that I think got shot at like a 9, for example. I've got the ones that I think have a shot at like a 10 already in top loaders. So we'll see if we can get some fun 10s on the market soon.
Are you guys still ripping sealed product, or are you going through your existing collections, or are you acquiring collections? What is your primary?
So for me, this is stuff I put in a binder actually during COVID, and thank you past me, I actually like pseudo graded a lot of them. So these are ones that I thought were like at the time like maybe at least a 9 in condition. So I'm just going through them with maybe a more experienced eye now and trying to sort them into actually graded. So these were originally actually not ripped from packs though. These were actually ones I bought off of I'd say mostly eBay, although some through the Facebook group. I think I've said before, I mean, we don't really need to get into that now, but when you're looking at eBay, I guess if I had one tip for anyone, it's to make sure you can see the backs of the cards if they're, of value. Because that's where the wear will show before. The front will look like amazing, but you'll turn over the back and it's like jacked up. That still won't get you the surface, but at least, that's like, that'll get rid of like half of the lightly played cards right there.
Yeah, for the foils, right? The back is the hard one.
Yeah.
Well, the scratches don't really, you can't really see them that well, like, especially on a lot of the foils. At least the foil bulk lots I've come across, which is not recently, but it was always like, oh, this looks great, and then I like get the magnifying glass out, and then all of a sudden, like, whoa, like that's like some major scratches, and then I'm like, I can't submit any of these, like they're all off.
Someone took the Brillo pad to the surface. It's sad.
Yeah, it's rare. Like I have bought like some cards on eBay, but I really am very skeptical that they're going to come back anything acceptable. I have just been slowly acquiring booster packs, but I haven't had the courage to open those yet. But I'm still waiting for another large order to come back from PSA. I think I have like 50 something cards with them. A lot of Japanese cards. I've been separating the Japanese cards that I think are like 9 or below are the ones that I think have a good shot at 10. And just submitting those. Commons, uncommons, rare, doesn't matter. Like I'll submit it, see where it goes. I don't know if I'm gonna get a whole Japanese set graded, but I got a good start. So I was like, might as well keep going. I don't know when PSA is going to update their registry. I wish other companies had registries too. I feel like we'd get some lively activity, at least with BGS.
BGS has set registers. They're very popular actually for Magic. People compete a lot, but for Star Wars,
that's what I mean. The CCG,
10 BGS collectors, it's not enough to compete.
Yeah, we need the sets on there. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think it'd be very competitive. I know I was very competitive with those. The currency, they're engaging. You find yourself wanting to suddenly buy the card that's the next grade up just so you could get it on your registry set before the next guy. And I get that appeal with some of the more common stuff like Lorcana and Pokemon. There's tons of sets on there, so you could dive right in and see where you stand out. And,
these set competitions are very healthy for the hobby. Like it drives a need for getting more cards, grade more cards. Just try to get just 1 or 2 card a better grade, so you get a better score in the end. Like people.
Yeah, you will end up spending more money than you sought out to do, like 100%, because you're gonna be like, oh, I see the card I need for my set. Like I would need that card. So if I guess final thoughts here, what are your current short-term goals here, or what things are you currently working on, whether that's sets, grading, or something different? What are you guys working on?
Well, I've been working on my Japanese mains for almost like 3 years now, I guess, close to that. And I'm almost done now, trying to get the 9.5s quads with no 9 subgrades, but that's very tough. So I'm missing like 3 or 4 cards, I think, like Obi-Wan, Tarkin, for sure. I think that's it. And once I'm done with that, then I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe the English premiere and A New Hope, just because it stays in my nostalgia area or whatever. But I have no intention of going for like a episode 1 sets or like a special edition or stuff like that. I'll stay definitely within the movies and probably premiere.
Okay. Premiere, maybe A New Hoff.
Yeah.
New Hope, Hoff, maybe.
Yeah, A New Hope premiere, and that's probably gonna be it. Because I was not very big for the other set, even if I really like them, and I can enjoy like all the Empire Strike Back and Return of the Jedi sets. I think they're really cool, but they don't do the nostalgia for me, so I'm probably not gonna go after them.
Okay. Mark?
As I mentioned before, just trying to grade all sorts of odds and ends, seeing if I can get like some nice 10s out there. So this is just like a lot of cards I think have shots at 10s. They're not really mains, but you know.
Are they mostly Reflection 1 foils?
No, these are like reflections too, like a combo card. You got some combo cards, some reflections too, like VRF foils, like
okay.
Endor foils, and they're common foils. Just getting some variety out there, so people don't just see like the typical suspects of mains. So I think that'll be fun to get some of those out there. Here you go, G-Beck or Nurseberg. Here you go, use your Force Lightning. Maybe that's the future PSA 10 right there. So that's my goal for Star Wars CCG. Just keep working on building the healthy market.
So eliminating all the pop zeros, essentially.
That's right. We're going to fill it out. That pop it's going to be thick and
kind of in the same boat. Like, I'm happy to grade something like nobody would grade, like just because I'd be like, this is really obscure and weird. And I know we kind of like kicked that off with like the pack to grade challenge, and maybe we need to do that again.
First soon. PSA 10 sweeper set or seeker set. Is that how it's going to be?
I know. Well, now, yeah, I need an English seeker, and I think the biggest goal is I want to get a T-shirt with like a graded seeker on there.
Because I have like the Logan Paul, like the necklace with like all the full set of 10s on it.
Well, that too, but I don't actually own the Tarkin Seeker.
Wow, we'll have to
that Tarkin Seeker Japanese 10 is Jamie's, which he submitted. I'm like, oh my god, dude, you're one-upping me here. My $5 card is now worth $3 because you have a better one. I'll have to. I'm submitting. I'm going to submit more. I have tons of Japanese cards to submit.
What about you, Kyle? What's your goals?
Yeah, my goal is finish the anthology. I'd like to get a top grade anthologies set. I'm struggling to come across first anthology cards in high condition, but the second and third ones, I have lots of those. So I still have some of those out for grading right now. Then finishing with the Jedi pack, the tournament set. What else? There's some other
got a few project going
cards in there. I like the promo set because it's like accessible, but it's hard to grade those well because a lot of them in the wrappers like don't do well. So I've sold a bunch of really, really low grade ones that have come back, but I have stacks of those. And then the Japanese premiere stuff, I still have to go through the rest of my box and like manually inspect like more of them. It's just time consuming. But I have a stack of more cards to go out. I have some out right now. I don't know ultimately what I'll do with the Japanese premiere. It's just, if I have so many high grade cards in that set, I might as well just keep going. And of course, like the mains, like what you're doing, the opposite, those are like the grails, right? But there's a lot of other weird random cards in there that I might be the only one to grade those cards, right? Which is fine.
I'll probably be able to help you with the common uncommon. I have boxes and boxes of them.
So the funny thing is, and I was telling Jamie this, and he started buying like a lot of the uncommons too, but the uncommon ones in Japanese premiere are harder to come across in a lot of ways than some of the rare twos. There's rare twos that are available very cheap, and right now they're just not a market for it, right? So whereas I may have spent a year ago, 2 years ago, more on just filling out my set, now they're not worth as much. So I'm like, well, I clearly spent 50 on that last year, but now it's worth $10. So I'm gonna buy it and see if I can grade it. Maybe I'll get a good one. I know William Livingston in Japan has been grading random Japanese cards too. So I've been we've been going back and forth of whether we want to keep going with this or not. And I know Jamie has a whole stack of Japanese Premier, different cards. So I'm like, do we consolidate this and make a magical museum set of this, or do we fight to compete on who gets a better set? So we're all kind of in limbo with that right now. We just need.
I'll agree with you on the uncommons, though. I ran out of some of the Empire officers, like Colonel Wolf Yularen, and
I mean, even the Imperial class Star Destroyer is. I've only pulled that once or twice.
I probably have a stack.
You've seen how many packs I've ripped. It's just you just don't see it that often.
Yes, some of them it's pretty random. I have a stack of destroyers, maybe 30 or 40, something stupid, but then I completely ran out of some of the officers. I forgot their name, the one that asked Tarkin, should we evacuate? What's his name?
Oh, Chief Bast.
Chief Bast. I'm always looking for that guy and the Colonel, and I have
yeah, stuff like that is harder.
Some of the rares, I have 10 of them, and then I can't find Chief Bast.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. We have you now, and the garbage chute fly.
Dice I Be Gone. I probably have 15 Dice I Be Gones.
So, anyways, yeah, this has been a good conversation, and I hope we can do it again soon. I'd love to dive more back into some of the sets that we had visited a year ago to where they are now, moving forward, as well as continue this conversation on subgrades and population reports and some of the exciting sales that, thanks to Luke, we have a lot of data on. That's been super helpful. So, yeah, thanks, guys.